failure is the best form of reality TV. And the reason for that is because we like to see people do terribly at things that we probably couldn't do ourselves, or do terribly at things we probably would be very good at. My favorite form of failure is in cooking shows. I love watching Worst Cooks in America. I love watching Nailed It. Worst Cooks in America is a particular vice for me because I really do enjoy seeing home cooks present their honestly terrible, awful creations to celebrity judges like Anne Burrell and many of the other guest judges she has on her show. And Worst Cooks in America is a really fun show to watch because you're seeing these home cooks make the things that they eat every single day that seem perfectly fine to them. But when you put it in front of someone else, it's absolutely horrendous. Another show I mentioned is Nailed It. I love Nailed It because I love baking. I understand that baking is very hard and it can be a challenge. And watching amateur bakers try to make very extravagant illusion cakes is something that's a lot of fun to me because I've never made an illusion cake before, but watching other people try to do it is funny because they're under a lot of pressure, they have a short amount of time, and a lot of the illusion cakes they have to make are very extravagant and very decorative, and they've probably never decorated a cake in their life. These kind of shows serve as a guilty pleasure for me, and I've enjoyed them in the past couple years. Another show that I've really liked in the past couple years is Without a Recipe from the Try Guys. The first episode of Without a Recipe was uploaded to BuzzFeed titled The Try Guys Try to Bake Bread Without a Recipe. Currently, it's sitting at 29 million views and counting.
I am starting with yeast.
So what is yeast? This is the stuff that gives women infections. Is this different yeast?
And so one of these yeast packets is 14 grams, just a little bit of that. There we go. That's all the yeast you need.
Yeast is going in, baby.
So in 2019, when they went out to create their own brand, they did start a lot of their own original series on their own channel, but they also brought in some series they did with BuzzFeed to their personal channel. And one of those series was Without a Recipe. And I was someone who was a huge fan of Without a Recipe. I enjoyed watching it for a while, but I think I've gotten to the point now where I feel like it's lost its charm for me. I think one thing that was really fun about Without a Recipe was the fact that you have 4 people that don't know how to bake, don't know how to cook really. They're not that skilled in the kitchen, and you're asking them to make muffins, you're asking them to make cakes, you're asking them to make dumplings, and you're asking them to make these things without a recipe. With the recipe is challenging enough because you have to follow the recipe, you have to get the right measurements, the right ingredients, you have to follow the recipe to a T. But without a recipe can be very challenging and very difficult. And it's a lot of fun to see these guys flounder around the kitchen, kind of go berserk and do their own thing. Oftentimes they make things that are really bad. Sometimes they make things that are very unhinged. A lot of times you just see a lot of chaos. But chaos in the kitchen can be fun. And I think that was the appeal for Without a Recipe in the beginning seasons. But I feel like as time has gone on and as we have more and more seasons of the show, I find myself less interested in the series. I think the earlier seasons of Without a Recipe were really fun and they were very energetic and they brought this kind of escapism feel to them. But as the series has continued, I found myself being less and less interested in the show. And it's really because they aren't improving in any kind of way. Now, I do want to preface this by saying, I understand that Without a Recipe is a very difficult show to do. It's hard to bake with a recipe at times if you're new to baking, and even cooking can be challenging. And I understand that the Try Guys have already stated that they are not experts in the kitchen. And it's hard enough for everyday people to find a recipe to make, get the ingredients, find the time to make it, and actually execute it. That can be challenging for anybody depending on, your financial situation, your schedule, what have you. But one thing that I know as someone who cooks and bakes, when you find the time to make it part of your daily life and you work on this skill set, eventually you come to understand that cooking and baking, it can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. And in watching Without a Recipe all these years, I feel like the guys have gained knowledge. They have gained some nuggets of information from the mistakes they have made and the lessons they've learned, but it really feels like they are missing a foundation or a baseline when it comes to cooking and baking. And because of that, in a lot of even present day episodes and newer episodes, they are making the same mistakes that they made in the past, or they're making even worse mistakes. And it feels like if you've been doing this show for so long, if you are one of the main participants on your channel's cooking shows, if you're someone who has bragged about training under Michelin star chefs, you should be better at this. You should have improved by now. There should be a new set of skills that you are harnessing. And if I do not see that, and without a recipe, then something is missing. Something is wrong. Seeing you make the same mistakes over and over again isn't funny. It's actually really frustrating. And I'm not saying that the Try Guys are incompetent, because obviously they have a successful brand, they have a successful business, but for some reason, it seems like in the kitchen, you all flounder and fail and do terribly. And I don't understand why that is. So let's look at the structure of the show. They'll introduce what they're making.
Episode. They're making Girl Scout cookies.
Today, we're making croissants.
And then they'll have the professionals show you how to make it. And then, of course, in the video, it goes from the professional making it and following steps, and then it goes to the amateurs in the kitchen trying to make the same thing without a recipe. The main meat and potatoes of the show is watching the cast completely lose their minds and act utterly unhinged in the kitchen. I understand that the punchline for the show is that nobody knows how to bake and nobody knows what they're doing, so they're just kind of throwing whatever they can to the wall and hoping something sticks.
All right, and go. Flaming hot Cheetos, onion powder. Yeah. Some xanthan gum on that shit.
No.
Why?
Xanthan gum is a gum. It makes things gummy.
I want it to bind together like Zach said.
I understand that failure is kind of seen as the benchmark of the show, so mediocrity is often rewarded, but after a certain amount of time, we have to come to the conclusion that this cannot be all that we are bringing and presenting to your audience and presenting to your viewers. At some point or another, you have to get tired of making the same mistakes over and over again.
Whether you've kneaded enough is...
Look, the more solid stuff I put in here, the better shot I got. Now I'm back in my comfort zone. Cereal.
There has been a pattern of failure, mistakes, and messes being made in this show that is being chalked up for laughs, but at this point it feels like it's theater, because it can't be that all these grown adults in this kitchen don't know how to bake a cake. I know that making something with a recipe can be hard, and making something without a recipe can be even more challenging, but we cannot be making these kind of mistakes in the kitchen. You cannot go into the kitchen and just throw whatever you think works into the mixing bowl.
Why would I measure if I don't even know what the measurement means?
What am I going for?
Why not just throw a bunch of this shit in a bowl and pray, which is what I've been doing, and it's gotten me all the way to third place.
You do not need to put baking soda and baking powder into a recipe. It's either one or the other. Sometimes it's both, sometimes it's neither.
Sugar, salt, and flavorings, milk, eggs, and butter.
Baking soda, I know, goes in baking stuff.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, or baking powder at least, yeah.
You definitely don't want baking soda or baking powder.
What else do I have at my disposal here? Could it be baking soda?
I would stay away from any other kind of leaveners like baking soda, baking powder.
I got baking soda.
What? I always forget baking soda, but I don't know what it's for. A lot of baking soda.
Baking soda.
You do not measure flour with the shovel. You measure it with cups and you level the flour. I understand if you have not baked before, that may be a new concept for you. But I'm sure some of y'all have watched a baking competition before, or you've watched someone bake, or you've watched someone cook, and never have you seen them take flour from a jar and just pour it in the bowl. Also, because they have no recipe, a lot of times when they're making something, they will take the basic thing that they're making and of course make it a little more extravagant, which is fine if you're a professional, which is fine if you know how to make it, which is fine if you have the basic foundational knowledge to bake something. But if you do not have that foundational knowledge, if you do not have that baseline, what you're doing is entering the kitchen and committing yourself to the act of tomfoolery and shenanigery. Another thing that I feel like needs to be brought up is that baking and cooking is a science. There's a reason why you follow a recipe, because if you put in the wrong thing, or if you put too much of something, or if you don't bake something properly, you could present something to the judges that will make them sick.
Did you have to step in anywhere this season to stop someone from eating something inedible or dangerous?
No, I don't think so. But at one point in one of the episodes, one of the judges looks like it's about to come right back up. Like she swallows it and then she's like, and the judge next to her is like, get her water, get her more water. Like she kept it down. It was Rosanna. But
I was going to say it has to be
Poor
Rosanna.
it has to be
Poor
Rosanna.
Rosanna.
She's always getting tortured
Poor brave
like that.
Rosanna, who
Poor
always takes a
thing.
big bite no matter what.
Or if you don't know what you're doing in the kitchen, you could hurt yourself.
As the other contestants finalize their donuts, the burn on Zach's hand prevents him from frying or decorating.
For me, baking is fun. I enjoy it. It's a hobby of mine. But I also understand that baking, cooking can be a very dangerous thing. And if you do not know what you're doing, you become more of a danger to yourself and others when you step into the kitchen because you do not have the know-how.
Oh gosh, that smells so good.
Put your hands up, put your hands up. There's glass, there's glass.
Oh shit. So do I not have ingredients anymore? Oh no.
Hey, Art, we gotta clean this up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It's cool.
I'm so sorry.
I've done that before.
I get that this show is meant to be funny, it's meant to be a comedy, it's meant to be a joke. Because when people mess up, it's hilarious. I understand that. But I feel that failure is really funny when you know that it's temporary. Like, this is where you're at in this stage right now, but you will become better. And the show has been going on for many years, and it shouldn't have taken until 2024 for Zach and Keith to be able to make a cake that is just edible, just good enough for Johnny and Rosanna to eat without feeling grossed out by it. We should have reached this level a long time ago. And really, you should be a lot further ahead because you are the senior cast members out of all of the new cast members you now have joining the Try Guys. There are times where I'm watching the show and I really think to myself, have we really not learned? Have we really not grown? Have we really not gotten better? Because if you're making the same mistakes and repeating it for years and years and years, and I don't see any true development happening, then I have no choice but to think that you're just incompetent. And I don't want to say that because that feels rude and that feels harsh, but at this point, there's video evidence of you not being able to get better. And the thing about cooking and baking, if you do it in your everyday life, it's something that becomes easier. And I feel like if you know you're doing the show, if you know the show is coming up every single year, and you know you have to do it, at some point or another, let's learn some technical skills. Let's learn how to bake. Let's learn how to cook. Let's learn how to conduct ourselves in the kitchen. Let's learn how to measure things out. Let's learn how to bake things properly. And I know that there are fans of the show that talk about how memorizing recipes or looking things up beforehand is considered cheating. But at this point, are we really satisfied with what we're being presented with? Is the finished product really enough? Is this really palatable enough? Are you really satisfied with what is being brought to you? One reason why I feel like I've reached this point without a recipe is because of the new cast. Now, I just want to say, I think the new cast is great. It's wonderful to see a lot of new, fresh faces, and even people that we've already seen on the channel before become a permanent part of the Try Guys cast. I think that's wonderful, and I'm very, very happy to see an expanded cast for the Try Guys. However, because Zach and Keith are senior cast members, like I've said previously, there was no reason why neither one of them didn't finish first in Kitchen Madness. If you've been doing it for this long, you should be better than your new competitors by a landslide.
Butter, flour, sugar, water, yeast.
Did I throw yeast in already?
Where's the second one of these? Crazy, I've been doing this show for a long time. When the crew laughs, it means you're doing something awesome.
I wonder, when does it need to go in here? Are you into hot stuff? That's no joke. And then we going crazy with it, crazy with it, crazy with it, crazy with it, crazy with it. Without a recipe yet. I've won phoning it in, but that's because Johnny helped me.
Now, there are many new cast members that we already know are not good in the kitchen, i.e. Jared.
I've done kosher salt, baking soda, AP flour.
Have as much heat on the butter or something like that.
guess you can't put stuff in when it's going.
24 cookies. That's, that's so many cookies. I've never made one.
Fermented milk will not taste good. It will have like a acidic kind of flavor.
I kind of want to put honey in it.
Adding too much sugar or the skin will kind of speed that up, and we want to stay away from that.
More sugar. Not enough sugar in my food. How much sugar does one really need? Also, red velvets, it seems like, how hard could that be? I mean, every bakery in the world has red velvet. So I'm hoping that that subconscious energy of knowing how attracts itself to me in the kitchen. I don't know what's in red velvet. Why'd I choose red velvet?
I don't know. I fear I must move on, or else I will say something rude. Marissa obviously already has some skills in the kitchen. I've seen her on Phoning It In. She's been on Without a Recipe before. She is knowledgeable. I think she's a great addition. I actually really like her. But you know, she has her hiccups. It happens. Joyce, I love her because she's Haitian American. I'm Haitian American. What's up? And I think she's great in the kitchen too. Even she had her moments, and that's okay. You're a new girl. You got it. Ash, I think is really great and super cool, and I'm glad that he's part of the Try Guys cast. Sad to see him go so quickly, but hopefully he will be redeemed. Also, I did not watch the Revenge special because I don't have second try. Whoops, sorry, I ain't got the funds. I think that Ryan was the most interesting person to me because he watched episodes of Without a Recipe to train. Ryan being a new contestant on Without a Recipe and preparing for Without a Recipe by watching old episodes of Without a Recipe is like somebody learning how to play guitar for the first time and then going to the person who's in the next level than you. You don't go to someone who's also learning. You go to someone who has the knowledge, who has the skills, who has the experience. Ryan should have took a baking class. He should have took a cooking class. He should have got up in that kitchen and tried baking a cake on his own. That's what he should have done. Watching the show is such a terrible way to prepare because you're just watching people fail and hoping they can do better than their failures. But there is nothing being taught. There's no skills being introduced. There's no educational value behind it. It's just mess and chaos that's being fed into your brain. And you feel like that is the way to retain things. It's not. That's not how you learn. And the thing is that the new cast members, of course, they weren't like successful. They floundered, they messed up, they did badly, but they're new to this. Keith and Zach are not new to this. It is excusable if you see Jared scooping flour. Actually, that's not excusable. That's actually disgusting. Jared putting his hand in the flour was disgusting. When I look at how the new cast did versus the original Try Guys, it makes their failures so, it's like glaringly apparent. It's in your face at this point. And even before Kitchen Madness came out, I was really on the fence of whether or not I was going to watch the new season because I was already feeling tired of the show. But watching the new season made me realize that we really have to step it up. There is a way to improve Without a Recipe. Like I said before, I do like the show Worst Cooks in America, but that's because they start off as failures. They don't stay that way. They learn, they improve their skills, they grow, and they become better. That is the draw and the appeal to the show. The draw and the appeal to Without a Recipe is that you're seeing amateur bakers in the kitchen doing terribly. Like, whenever Keith has his meltdown, at first it was funny because it was a bit, but when he had his meltdown for the wedding cakes episode, I was so annoyed because he put too much baking powder and baking soda in his cake. Instead of just making duplicates of the batter, he poured way too much in these bowls. And then he started pouring his batter into a tub that's meant to carry dirty dishes and started mixing it with his hands. And then when the judges didn't like it, he got up and started screaming like he's a little kid. You're a grown man. You don't know how to bake a cake without a recipe. Many people don't know how to bake a cake with a recipe. But at this point, you should know better than to put your hands in the batter. In all sincerity, for me, as a viewer, I think that I am more interested in seeing people win based off of skill rather than whose cake or whose creation was most edible. I would rather see contestants win based off of them getting better and them growing in their skill set rather than seeing who was doing just well enough so that mediocrity is rewarded in the end. Because I don't think that's entertaining anymore. In all honesty, I would rather see the Try Guys make more episodes of 4 against 1 when there are 4, people that don't know how to play mini golf, or 4 people that don't know how to play chess against one person who is an expert. I would rather see more episodes of that, more episodes of phoning it in, rather than more episodes of Without a Recipe. I would rather see the show evolve and celebrate improvement rather than incompetence, because this is what it feels like. At this point, Without a Recipe feels like failure for failure's sake with very little payoff. And using failure as the punchline isn't funny anymore.